I'd like to talk to you today about funding of the capital project that's being proposed. And I want to point out that our district is able to pay for the proposed capital project without increasing the capital portion of the tax levy. This means that this capital project will not cause your taxes to increase. So what does the capital portion of the tax levy actually mean? You may remember from previous budget presentations that the tax levy limit calculation is actually an 8-step formula. 2 of those steps involve what's called the capital exclusion. So in one step, it's for the current year, and in another step, it's for the upcoming year. And the capital exclusion basically is the district's total obligation for that particular year of capital expenses, and it also takes into consideration any building or other types of aid that would offset that. When we talk about the capital portion of the tax levy, we're actually talking about the capital exclusion, and this is the number that will not increase from its current level. So we have 3 factors that come into play that are helping us to fund the capital project. One is the fact that interest rates are low. The second is the fact that we have some old debt from previously approved capital projects that will be falling off. And in addition, our building aid ratio has been increasing over the years. So let's talk about what building aid is. Building aid is a formula-based aid that is determined in part on the wealth of a district. So for districts that have particularly high wealth and low need, they would have a very low building aid ratio, as possibly as low as 10%. For high need districts that have low wealth, they have a very high building aid ratio, and it can be a maximum of 95%. For the Pawling School District, our building aid ratio has been historically 41.5%, but that number has been increasing since the 2017-2018 school year. So at this point, our building aid ratio is 50.6%. So that means that our district will receive 50.6 cents for every dollar that is spent on eligible capital expenses. The term eligible expenses is important to understand when we're talking about building aid, because not all of the costs associated with the capital project will actually be aidable. For the improvements that are going to be made to our buildings, between 90 to 95% of those expenses will be eligible for building aid. But when we talk about improvements that include site work and some other incidental expenses, some of those expenses will not be eligible for building aid because we will have reached our cap for that category of expenses. Another source of funding for capital projects is what's called a capital reserve. Our district established a capital reserve in May of 2017 after approval from the voters to do so. And the intent of this reserve was to put money aside for future capital projects. So since May of 2017, we have been able to put aside almost $3.2 million. And we intend to use these funds to offset some of the costs for the capital project. Another funding mechanism for capital projects is the utilization of an energy performance contract. Many capital improvements, such as lighting replacements and boiler and hot water heater replacements, actually result in energy savings. And under an energy performance contract, we are able to capitalize on the energy savings that we will see on the operational side of our budget to offset some of the costs on the capital side of the budget. We expect to be able to utilize $1.9 million of the capital project work under an energy performance contract. A common way for school districts to finance capital projects is through the issuance of bonds. And bonding can be done on a short-term or a long-term basis. Short-term bonding is referred to as bond anticipation notes, or BANs. And BANs are typically used at the onset of a capital project in order to generate cash flow. Once the district has a better sense of the total dollar amount that's going to need to be borrowed to fund the project in whole, then we will switch over to long-term borrowing. Okay, so now let's revisit the question. How does the district go about paying for $47.8 million worth of a capital project without increasing the capital portion of the tax levy? So we have been working with our fiscal advisors, and they have developed a plan that takes into account the phasing in of the work and the corresponding expenses, and also the financing that's needed to support that work. They've also taken a look at the debt that we have that's falling off and the small amount of debt that we have that will remain on our books. And then they've also timed that with the building aid that will correspond to the new work. And they have come up with a plan that will keep the capital portion of our tax levy steady and equal to, or lesser than in some cases, its current level.
Allow me to run through the propositions that will be before the voters on December 16th. There is more detail line by line about these propositions in both the district newsletter and on the capital projects page of the district website. But in brief, Proposition 1 totals $36.7 million. It is overwhelmingly focused on health and safety and the findings from our building conditions survey across our 3 buildings. The health and safety projects within Proposition 1 total nearly $28 million. The local share, the portion that the taxpayers will bear in our regular school district budget and in the capital expenses, totals $16 million. And the total proposition is offset by the contribution of $3.2 million from the capital reserve that has been set aside for projects such as this. Proposition 2, which cannot pass without Proposition 1 passing, accounts for an additional $9.8 million to our project, bringing the total for Propositions 1 and 2 to $46.5 million. Proposition 2 is focused on the construction of a multi-sport synthetic turf athletic field, appropriate seating, lighting, and appropriate parking for athletic events. The building aid returned on Propositions 1 and 2 is 75% together, bringing the total local share of Propositions 1 and 2 to $27.5 million. Proposition 3, which cannot pass without Propositions 1 and 2 passing, adds an additional $1.3 million to the total project, bringing it to the $47.8 million. The local share altogether for the 3 propositions is $28.5 million, and together they earn 75% building aid. Proposition 3 consists of the minor renovation here in the elementary school to allow for an enhanced music classroom and for an enhanced maker space. It also brings air conditioning to the high school auditorium and provides appropriate corridor lockers in our high school. So how do you take action on all the information that you're garnering about these propositions? As your superintendent of schools, I want to let you know that our governance team, sincerely believes that we are acting on a high degree of community involvement, but there really is no better way to have your say than to come out and vote. This vote on these propositions, Proposition 1, 2, and 3, voting will take place in the elementary school, and there'll be an opportunity to vote in a traditional way. It will be safe and socially distanced. The voting hours will be from noon to 9 p.m. To afford everyone the opportunity to vote. And of course, absentee ballots may be solicited from the district clerk. I would ask everyone to come out and vote and be sure that your voice is heard.